All right, let's do it. Joining me now, Jim Pfaff. Welcome back to the Alec Lace Show.
Good to see you, Alec.
Always a pleasure. Before I had you on here, I was talking a little bit about the Jasmine Crockett now throwing her hat in the ring. I think the best case scenario for us that happens is, she's out of the House now, but if she loses the race in the Senate, she's out of Washington. I mean, wouldn't that be nice? But what's your take on her running for the Senate here?
Yeah, I mean, the angels in heaven will be singing, and the reason I say that, both partly jokingly, but maybe even very realistically, is, you look at the outrageous evil that has been fomenting in Washington, D.C. for some time, mostly on the Democrat side, frankly, a few Republicans too over time. But that spiritual problem is a bad one because these people have this idea that what they do in Washington, D.C. matters. Then they want it to matter for their own personal gain and benefit. And then, worse than that, and in Jasmine Crockett's case, she's committed to an ideology that is un-American, really anti-American, not based upon the realities of free markets or individual liberty. These people, they hate the Constitution, they hate the Bill of Rights, except when it benefits them for a moment politically, then they abandon it immediately once they get more power. So anyway, she epitomizes that problem. Plus, put her kind of in the Ilhan Omar camp as well, too. You look at the corruption taking place in Minnesota. She's of that same ilk. I'm not connecting her directly to that corruption, but that's the same kind of attitude that's arrogant. I get to do what I want. And by the way, taxpayers, you need to pay me to do it. Attitude that is really destroyed much of what we do in Washington.
Well, what happens? There's no question about that. What happens with her seat now? I mean, I know that there was a redistricting that happened down there in Texas. I think we picked up 5 spots, maybe. But her district expanded? Do we have a crack at that, or is it still going to be a heavily blue area even with the expansion?
Well, part of the reason she's making the decision is it becomes pretty red. Now let's keep in mind. Although I think this redistricting effort is net positive for the GOP. These are based on 2024 numbers, and those have been shifting around a little bit lately. I think this is one of the big reasons Donald Trump has said he's going to hit the road and try to so-called go on the ballot, which I endorse and I want him to do, tell the economic message, talk up candidates, all that sort of thing, talk up what the hope for the future is. But that dynamic from 2024 is not exactly the same right now because of what people are perceiving is happening in Washington, D.C. So Republicans have a lot of work to bring this in, but that's a long way to answer, yes, her district becomes far more red than it was beforehand, which is one of the reasons why she's deciding to run for Congress, because the Supreme Court decision happened and it ain't going to change.
Yes. And also, too, it's just historically, and Trump usually points this out, historically, the president usually loses in the midterms. It usually shifts back the other way. Kalishi, the marketplace or Polymarket, whatever it is, has this at like 79% chance that the Democrats take the House, which I think is why right now they need to be. And I was just down there in D.C. last week talking to them in the Republican Study Committee. And I'm trying to tell these guys, all of the lawmakers I spoke, like the clock's running out here. Like there's got to be a sense of urgency to start codifying some of Trump's stuff, get the election integrity. Like if we don't move now within this last year, if we do go down in flames in 26 with the House, that's the end of the Trump's presidency of getting anything accomplished.
Well, listen, that Democrats feel like, whether it's right or not, feel like they've got an edge when Chuck Schumer goes up on the floor of the Senate and talks down Republicans. Like he's really quiet otherwise. So today, or maybe it was yesterday, he went on the floor saying Republicans can't even figure out what to do on health care. You got one group doing this, one group. To be candid, that's right. I mean, I have to agree with him on that. This is the problem. This is the potential problem for 2026. Donald Trump's not our problem. He's got it figured out, and he makes his mistakes, but they're very rare and few, and they're not very bad. Republicans make lots of mistakes. One of the big ones they're making right now is they need to put a dang reconciliation bill on the floor. They need to change Obamacare through that reconciliation bill. Remember, that's exactly how Obamacare got passed to begin with. It was through reconciliation. So just yank the whole thing out. Tell a parliamentarian to go pound sand, because it's just the Republican floor members that decide it. Get a bill through that actually entirely strips Obamacare away, goes back to the system we had before, imperfect though it was, far superior.
Yes.
Andy Biggs has a bill that does exactly that right now. Andy Biggs from Arizona. So that needs to happen. I mean, this is where they can have big wins. Everyone knows that Obamacare sucks. They're not going to be able to extend these Obamacare subsidies because that bloats the budget out the wall, and it doesn't fix the main core of the problem that I think American people are most worried about. Not give me money to pay for my health care. Just stop making it so expensive. That's what they're looking for.
Yes.
So I think a repeal of Obamacare would get there. And by the way, amongst other things, this next reconciliation package should be a fabulous opportunity to implement a lot of the EOs that Donald Trump signed so far. So take advantage of it. Tell the parliamentarian to go pound sand, get the job done.
I agree, and it may be their last chance to do this. So I mean, I got to get. And I agree that we didn't. Medical care is a big problem here. I mean, it is a mess. But whatever we were at before Obamacare, you're right. If we could just repeal it, get it out of the way completely, and go back to what it was prior. It's just so many people, myself included, everyone paid the price for this.
And by the way, Alec, let me throw in here. I might have told this story on your show before, but I was sitting outside the Capitol. This was back in like 2012 or 13 with a friend talking about Obamacare. And there were a couple of young Democrat staffers there who were blown away when I told them the $5,000 deductible for my family of four that I'm paying, well over $500 or $600 a month for. That just a few years prior, I was paying about $350 a month for a family of four, and my deductible was $500 total for the family. Like I could make it $1,000 if I wanted to save a little money. Like they knew back then how bad it is. It's gotten much worse now. If I want to get coverage this year on the marketplace, I have to take a $10,500 deductible, and I've got to pay nearly $1,000 a month. It's an outrage.
Yeah, unbelievable. So many people got trapped into this thing, and it's a mess. And the problem is too. I know that like there seems to be no clear-cut way on how to do this entire healthcare going forward. But this was not the answer, obviously. The way that they did, and they made it sound like it's Obama's whole legacy. When they say, "Oh, it was Obama's," that's his whole accomplishment, and it sucked. Let me go back into what's going on. Talk about D.C. The D.C. police chief just resigned. Now, this was this idiot that went up there, didn't even know what the chain of command was. The chain of command. What's that mean? Like she had no clue what she was doing, in way over her head, but also tied to a little bit of corruption herself there. So what's your take on the police chief stepping down?
Well, it's good news for people in D.C., I can tell you that. And keep in mind that a lot of the problems that police department was having was due precisely to her policies and to Muriel Bowser, the current mayor's policies. When I was living in the district, or at least part living. I've never fully lived in the district. I keep my home in Indiana. But I had a place in the district in 2011, 12, 13. I have to tell you, the police department was doing a fantastic job. There was crime in the city. Of course, there are places you need to be careful of. But if you went across the river to Anacostia, for example, which is the worst crime area of that city, it was actually relatively safe to go there in 2011, 12, 13, 14. It's not now. It's gotten real bad again. And all of this has happened since Muriel Bowser became mayor and because of a DEI hire on the police force. There are a lot of police officers in the DC police force who are really fantastic police officers. I observed this. I was watching them go and take care of things. And that's really changed because they've had all the power taken away from them. It's good news. I think a lot of the officers there are going to feel much better about it. They already feel better about what Donald Trump has done to help support what they're trying to do. That's evidenced by the police union are endorsing everything that Donald Trump's doing. That's going to give them more relief. Hopefully they get a better mayor now that Muriel Bowser's not going to run again, and maybe there's an opportunity to embed. I mean, I think we need to get rid of DC home rule, frankly. But until we do, maybe there's an opportunity to get someone better in there that would do a better job.
And the whole district of D.C. is so blue. Like it's amazing how it's always been that way. And then people that live there, even the ones that are diehard Democrats, they have to feel the sense of the change when they're living with all this crime that, like Trump says, can't go out at night, can't go here, and then you bring in the National Guard, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, I can go out. No matter which way that you're voting, you have to be able, as a family person, you got to see a little bit like, oh, thank God that they have them here. I mean, when it comes to the safety of your family, no matter what side of the aisle, you want protection, you want your police to be able to be there to protect you.
Yeah, and listen, the National Guard hadn't needed to go to all of DC proper because not everywhere is bad. You've got Columbia Heights, you've got Northeast and Southeast and extreme Southeast DC where you have problems, and then obviously just downtown, where you've got people visiting. Those areas are being covered very well, and you hadn't gotten rid of all the crime. It's not like it's a perfectly
Right.
peaceful place, but it is vastly superior to what it's been. And there's no doubt Democrats cannot argue that this is not working. It is working very, very well.
And the other problem, Jim, I wanted to get your take on here too, is we just had Ma'am Danny yesterday, the guy coming into New York City, telling illegals to stand up to ICE. And to not cooperate with ICE. You have Mayor Frey or Fry, whoever you say his name there in Minneapolis, who says openly just yesterday, we will not work with ICE. They're pushing back. Now, again, the rhetoric against ICE has been responsible for an uptick in 1,000% of attacks against ICE. We've seen one guy take a shot at the ICE officers. But you're having these Democrat mayors in two of these cities openly saying they're not going to support ICE or work with them or nothing like that. And that's going to send a terrible message to the people there as ICE tries to do their job. And it's just going to put their lives in danger and the illegals in danger.
Well, it's a consistent policy with these people. They hate law enforcement. They literally hate them. By the way, don't forget, as both of these mayors, Mamdani and Fry, are saying they're not going to support ICE, they're also telling their local police departments, we're not supporting you either, particularly in New York City, where Mamdani has put a strict order out or is about to put a strict order out that the NYPD cannot do anything to help ICE. This is a change from his predecessor, who was making some and who was a police officer himself. Adams was a police officer. He understood the police. I mean, I'm not trying to endorse him. He had his obviously liberal negatives, but he did kind of get this thing and was working well with Tom Homan to try to fix some things. And he just had problems with the city council holding him back. They're projecting to police officers, we don't like you. And police officers in local jurisdictions, they appreciate ICE. It takes a major part of their efforts off their hands with the help of ICE coming in to get rid of particularly these criminals, because the local police are having to deal with them too. So this sends a message to their local police. We screw you. We're going to stay down this path of hating the police and not giving you the resources you need. My dad, who owned about 103 fast food restaurants, used to always tell me his management principle, which was the job of a manager is not primarily to tell people what to do. It's to give people the tools they need to be successful. That was the job of a manager, in his opinion. I say the same thing with police department. They're telling these police departments, screw you, we're not giving you any tools to be able to get done what you need to do because we stand for the criminal. That's the message they continue to put out. I don't think the American people accept it. And I think Donald Trump and Republicans in general need to keep calling it out for just that end.
They do, and it's gonna create more chaos because you have one side telling you that the police, what they're doing, they're Gestapo, they're wrong, they keep using that rhetoric. They're disappearing people off the street, like they're kidnapping people for no reason that are totally innocent. And the Democrats have done a great job. The liberal media has done a fantastic job of pushing the narrative that these are just immigrants. Because they never, ever, they don't even mention undocumented anymore. They've dropped that like a wet towel. It's just immigrants. These are immigrants. They don't use illegal. They don't use undocumented. And they're making it sound as if that ICE is coming in and you got hardworking Americans that are getting snatched off the street in the middle of the night. And they're pushing that narrative and it's sticking because every one of them parroted across liberal media and it's not the truth.
Well, and Americans are getting jobs again. Let's think about this for a second. There's a lot of harm that illegal immigration brings into a society, not just the criminals. That's obviously the worst and most acute harm, but there are a bunch of harm. So you're noticing that American citizens are getting jobs at clips higher than they have been for the last 4 years. Prior to Donald Trump, you had illegals getting jobs all over the place. We had Democrats and some Republicans always saying, well, they take the jobs that Americans won't take. Well, now the numbers prove that's not the case at all. They were taking jobs away from Americans. You've got money that is moving through the hands of illegals in this country, getting siphoned off in transfer dollars to other countries, particularly Mexico, from illegals and some legals, but mostly illegals that are sending money out of the country. I mean, that's a harm ultimately that comes here. So the benefit of illegal immigration just doesn't exist. Legal immigration has its problems right now too. We've got problems with the H-1B program, but if we weren't dealing with all these illegals and we had to deal with the H-1B program, we'd be in pretty darn good shape. That's not killing us as much as this. So that's the message that we need to be talking about. The harm is not just the crime. It is the siphoning away of the American economy to other countries, especially in the fraud side of it. Now that we know money's going to Boko Haram, a terrorist group in Somalia, for example, coming out of Minnesota. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. So this needs to be addressed and continue to have this holistic message of the problem of illegal immigration.
It's out of control, and you're seeing so many of these people that have gotten licenses. They're driving trucks, but what's going on in Minnesota is total fraud that's been erupted up there. Total that thing is going to blow up a lot more than it is already. I mean, there's going to be a lot of people go down with that ship. It just seems inevitable. But it is to the point that where they have that narrative of these are just immigrants. That's all. This country was built by immigrants, and they've been able to just keep hammering that point, and they won't move off of it. And then they'll say, like, I think they'll put out a report like a certain percentage of illegals or immigrants that were arrested weren't criminals. But in the same sense, every single one that came in the country illegal committed a crime. But they don't see it that way. They avoid that completely, and they'll never give that up. As if it's, so what that they came into the country illegally? There's no crime in that. Yes, there is, but they've been good at pushing that narrative.
Well, there's a lot of equivocation that takes place in all political debates. One of them is America was built on immigrants. America wasn't built on immigrants. It was built on Americanized immigrants.
Right.
It was built upon immigration, or in part. I mean, it wasn't, maybe 20% of our population growth in the late 19th, early 20th century was immigration. But the immigrants that came in became radicalized Americans. They became radicalized constitutionalists who wanted America to be what it was. Who did, it's a good example, or an anecdotal one, is when you watch Casablanca, and there's that German couple that's talking about they're going to America, and they're spending all their time at the table talking about how they're Americanizing themselves. They want to talk about how they're going to say what time it is, what they're going to do when they get there. Like that was what immigrants did. They became American radicals. We do not have American radicals coming into this country right now.
You're right, Jim. And what they're trying to make it sound like is if this guy in Minnesota who can't speak English, who waves a Somalia flag, is just as equivalent to your grandmother who came here, learned the language, and started a business with pennies in her pocket. They want to make you believe that these are the same people, and they are not.
No, and particularly when it comes to Muslim immigration, there have been Muslim immigrants from Muslim countries who became radicalized Americans, by the way, but every Muslim immigrant from a Muslim country that promotes in any way or shape or form Sharia law, or promotes in any way, shape or form a socialist radical agenda, which that is the political agenda of the majority of the Muslim world, is socialist control over people. They don't call it socialism, but that's what it is. That's actually changing in the Middle East thanks to Donald Trump, because he's inspiring something different. But many of those people that came here, they didn't become radicalized Americans. They remained radicalized foreigners who injected themselves into this country. We need to demand for every green card holder that they either get radically Americanized or leave. And we need to tell every illegal that you're not allowed to be here, as we're doing, as Donald Trump is doing, that continued effort. And as people who are supporting Donald Trump's immigration policy, we need to be saying, yes, Tom Homan needs to keep emphasizing the criminal illegals and getting them out as quickly as possible. That's absolutely what we need to do. But the harms don't stop there. They're not as big a harms, but they are real harms. Jobs taken away. Money getting siphoned out of the country. And then in some cases, even the non-criminal illegals are taking these welfare checks that they don't deserve. That's our money getting supporting their lifestyle. They need to learn to support their lifestyle elsewhere. This message needs to be very consistent in what we do with immigration. We don't hate immigrants. We love radicalized American immigrants. That's what we love.
Right, come here with that with the dream to take part in the American dream, the American experiment, and love this country. You pledge allegiance to this flag. We don't say but not that long ago, Jim, the Democrats would say similar things. You have so many clips of like Hillary Clinton back then, Obama back then. Say, oh, you got to learn English, you got to speak English. If you've been here illegally, you got to pay a price, a fine. Back like so, all of a sudden there was a radical shift where it was just like, oh no, everybody could come in, and it's not a crime. And it just doesn't make any sense why they made that shift, except for the fact that it's to help keep them in power, to help them with their districting, and to also, I don't know what the other point of it would be other than they have to benefit from it in some way.
Well, ever since JFK, beginning with LBJ and McGovern running against Richard Nixon back in the early 70s, the Democrats have become invasion of the body snatchers, right? They put up this patina of being pro-American sometimes, although they do it much less now. But, they would put up this idea of being about the American ideal and the American dream. But what they were really about is some third world country's ideal of a constructed cultural regime run by a centralized government. That's really what they've been about. JFK was a patriot. I mean, I disagreed with some of his policies, but the man loved America. He hated communism. He was suspicious of the CIA. All the things that we're
you want to hear.
Yeah, exactly. That we're at right now. And ever since him, Democrats are invasion of the body snatchers. They're shapeshifters. They're chameleons. So when you see them speaking out against immigration in the 1990s, they weren't speaking out against immigration. They were speaking up for their union constituents who were at the time they noticed losing jobs. Now, all that changed, and it's not as bad a problem. Things have become what they are, and they found out, oh, well, listen, here's what we can trade off. This is why the unions, by the way, are more for Donald Trump than for Democrats right now, is that they figured out, okay, well, forget the unions for now, that we're getting voters out of these illegal immigrants and even legal ones. So let's just focus on that because our gain is much greater politically. And so they've thrown unions across to the side. That's why the Teamsters didn't endorse anybody during this last election. Why you had the Teamster president speaking at Donald Trump's nomination party at the RNC convention, because they know they're being betrayed by Democrats, because they're shapeshifters, invasion of the body snatchers. It's not an American party. They do not press American ideals. And in fact, they press things that will destroy the American ideal. The illegal immigration, the 1619 Project, just write the list out. That's what they do. They don't do anything else but tear down this country.
And you're right, and it does seem like they dropped the black voter as well, because all of a sudden they can't. And I was saying, back then, it's like their concern is not to help the poor, struggling illegal immigrant. No. Their concern is to help them stay in power. That's it. I mean, that was what it was all about.
It's all a power grab. Listen, they believe in power. Now we need to understand the definition of government is legal force. Like, if the government's going to do anything, it has to have the force to uphold it. What we did in this country is reduce the scope of the areas where the government can assert any force, and only to those areas where it was necessary for them to do so. Now, Republicans and Democrats have strayed very far from those constitutional restraints, but that Constitution still exists, and we need to assert it. And we need to draw the government back and let people live their lives. This is the biggest challenge for Republicans. They have to have this attitude and idea that you are the one that will benefit if we get away from your back.
Yes.
And they don't tell that story very well, because they also look down at K Street for their future opportunities when they stop becoming members of Congress to get their $300,000 paycheck. But they also look down the street because that's where they get their, the substance and the resource for them to stay in power. Republicans have got to break away from that. And until they do, until this message is clearly about we're doing this for you, and then actually follow through with legislation, then the American people are just going to go back and forth between Republican and Democrat the way they exist now.
Yeah, I agree, Jim. The last thing before I get you out of here, I know we've been on this, but I wanted to get your take on this Netflix Warner Brothers Discovery deal. Trump has weighed in on this a little bit, and it seems like it's going to be a total monopoly of liberal media. Netflix is way out of control. I mean, we always see the memes like, well, they'll have Netflix George Washington, and it's a black guy that plays them, or they'll make, they always throw the liberalism or the wokeness into everything they do. Now, going to have control of a much bigger media market with HBO involved and all this stuff, and especially the children's programming where everybody is gay or transgender, and they're going to continue to shove this stuff down our kids' throats. So what's your take on this deal that might go down here?
Well, generally, I'm not into politicians trying to skew what happens with these merger deals. But the reality is what Donald Trump is calling out here is not his desire to control everything. He's calling out a real threat. Reid Hoffman and Netflix. I mean, I don't know how many people watching you use Netflix. I stopped using Netflix years ago. That is the biggest trash heap of crap. And the stuff that's good and worth watching, even with all of Amazon's fault, I can go to Amazon Prime and I don't see nearly as much of this absolute filth and crap that gets promoted on Netflix. Reid Hoffman is un-American. This guy is absolutely crazy. I mean, he had a great idea and he built a great business model. And I have to give him credit for that. He just decided to turn it towards evil and not towards good. So I think that there's a real problem here. They know that they're losing their media monopoly. You see already in social media, Democrats complaining about the Ellison family, buying Paramount and CBS and all that. They're all ticked off about that, and they say Fox News and that, and now the conservatives dominate media, so they're making their play, and Donald Trump's calling it out. I agree with him calling it out. I'm not into government actors deciding how our economies run. But I do get where he's coming from, and we should shed a light on this. We do not want Reid Hoffman running a major portion of our media sources in this country. That's a real problem.
And it sucks because it's like you would want it to be just about the entertainment, storytelling, and stuff like that. But that's not what it is.
No.
It's a matter of propaganda and every single turn in every one of these productions that they do. And who has control of that? It's important now because it is political. That's what it is. They're pulling political messages even in the kids' cartoons that they're putting on now. So it's not like where it used to be, hey, we could just sit down and watch a Bugs Bunny cartoon, or we could laugh at the Roadrunner trying to catch the coyote trying to catch the road. That's not the case anymore. Now it's always like while you're watching that, there has to be a little kid who comes out of the closet wearing a dress. And it's like they're going to keep pumping it.
But I will say that we also do need to recognize that a large portion of our culture, not a majority portion, but a large enough one to bring revenue into the companies like Netflix, really do embrace many of these cultural norms that he's talking about. What's interesting is that since Joe Biden is off the stage and Kamala Harris lost, Donald Trump has done an excellent job of taking the government out of the cultural construct, deciding what culture will be, because we'll throw you in jail if you don't do it. Like they're doing in Europe right now, by the way. Right. People, and particularly in the UK, are going to jail for expressing an opinion against this kind of filthy, dirty crap. So it's, we have to have freedom even for filthy, dirty crap, because if we have that freedom, then we also have the freedom to change it to something much better. Listen, I'm telling you, I'm beginning to more radicalize in my discussions in media and elsewhere that we need to reassert a Christian ideal, a Judeo-Christian ideal in this country, because that foundation not only leads to a solid foundation for the rule of law, it also leads to an appropriate amount of shame and culture that says, listen, we want husbands and wives to form families and to have children because that's healthy for society. We need to have these kinds of messages replace these filthy ones that Reid Hoffman promotes. It's not like we need to pass laws against transgenders or against homosexuals or whatever. We need to have everyone live under the same law, and then those of good faith and of goodwill need to assert themselves boldly and courageously in culture to change what's going on. So I think Donald Trump's right to call out this deal, but we also need to recognize it's up to us to reassert through shame the proper kind of culture that truly did build this country well. We've never been a perfect nation. We've even had a decent amount of evil throughout our entire history. We've never had the kind of evil that mostly Democrats have fomented upon this country right now, utilizing government institutions to do it. They literally are breaking down culture in every way that they can, and we need to say, no mas. It's not going to happen anymore. And that would also be something we need to do while we're also calling out deals like this one.
I agree, Jim. Just like we see with PBS, NPR, same thing with they turned into complete Democrat propaganda machines and say, that's it. We're paying for it. We're paying for the propaganda. So, all right, listen, always love to have you on back down the line here. Jim Pfaff, Conservative Caucus. I got the link down there in the description below. Thank you so much for giving me a few minutes of your time today.
Alec, always great to be with you, my friend.
All right, grateful. Thank you to